Ladies and gentlemen, we have a kitchen emergency on stage. Richard Blackwood III snatched the microphone from Samantha Williams's hands. Without hesitation, he grabbed a glass of champagne from the podium and poured it over her head. The golden liquid cascaded down Sam's face and dress as 800 billionaires erupted in laughter. Victoria Blackwood's phone captured every second for her live stream. "This is hilarious!" she shrieked to 15,000 viewers. James Blackwood pointed and clapped, encouraging the crowd's roaring approval. Camera flashes lit up the ballroom like fireworks. Sam stood perfectly still, champagne dripping from her chin. Have you ever watched someone's life destroyed in front of hundreds of people? What you're about to see will shock you. This black woman's quiet response just obliterated a billion-dollar empire. Richard adjusted his bow tie and leaned into the microphone with theatrical confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why we have protocols." His voice boomed across the ballroom as champagne continued dripping from Sam's hair onto the marble stage. The help has clearly gotten confused about which entrance to use. Victoria's Instagram live viewer count jumped to 45,000. Comments flooded the screen. "OMG, dying laughing. She looks so embarrassed. Billionaire problems. Security should have caught this before she wandered onto our stage," Richard continued, his back deliberately turned to Sam. The crowd murmured agreement, wine glasses clinking in approval. James strutted across the stage like a peacock, making grand gestures for the cameras. "Ma'am, the service entrance is clearly marked. Kitchen staff should know better." From table 12, elderly oil heiress Margaret Foster loudly whispered, "How did catering get past security? This is embarrassing for the charity." Sam's briefcase sat beside the podium, its small WTS monogram catching the spotlights. She reached for a silk handkerchief from her pocket, wiping champagne from her eyes with methodical precision. Her Patek Philippe watch reflected the stage lights, a $180,000 timepiece that none of the Blackwoods noticed. Event coordinator Helen Carter rushed up the stage steps, her face flushed with panic. "Sir, there's been a terrible mistake." "The only mistake," Richard interrupted, "was letting unqualified people past security. Handle this properly, Helen." Victoria narrated to her growing audience. "You guys, this server actually thought she belonged on stage with real speakers." The audacity. Her live stream chat exploded. Second-hand embarrassment. "Someone call HR. This is why we need better screening." Business reporter Jake Morrison from Forbes sat at table 7, initially focused on his dinner. The commotion caught his attention. Something felt off about the woman's composure. Sam's phone buzzed quietly against her hip. The screen lit up briefly. Bloomberg alert. Williams Tech shares surged 23% on acquisition rumors. She ignored it. "This is what happens," Richard declared to the audience, "when people don't understand their place in society." Standards exist for a reason. 800 heads nodded in agreement. Phones emerged from designer purses, capturing the humiliation from every angle. Sam finally spoke, her voice cutting through the laughter with unexpected clarity. "Mr. Blackwood, are you certain you want this moment documented?" Richard scoffed. "Document away, sweetheart. Everyone should see what happens when the help gets ideas above their station." Victoria cackled into her phone. "She's threatening to report us." "To who? The Better Business Bureau?" The crowd's laughter reached a crescendo. Sam's phone buzzed again. This time, the screen displayed, "CNN Business, major acquisition announcement expected Monday." Helen Carter frantically scrolled through her tablet, searching the official guest list. Her fingers trembled as she typed Williams into the search function. Her face went white. "Sir," she whispered urgently, tugging Richard's sleeve. "Sir, we need to—" "Not now, Helen. Can't you see we're handling a situation?" Security Chief Todd Anderson climbed onto the stage, his hand resting on his radio. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me." Sam looked directly into Victoria's live streaming phone. "Before security escorts me, may I make one phone call?" Call whoever you want, Richard laughed into the microphone. The damage is already done. 800 witnesses and 50,000 viewers can't be wrong. Sam reached for her phone with the same methodical calm she'd shown throughout the humiliation. Her thumb scrolled through contacts, stopping at a name that made her lips curve into the faintest smile. She dialed. The phone rang once. Victoria's viewer count hit 89,000 as anticipation built. Comments poured in. She's calling her manager. Probably gonna get fired. This is better than reality TV. Richard gestured grandly to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, watch how the real world works. Actions have consequences. The phone rang a second time. Helen Carter stared at her tablet screen in absolute horror. The guest list entry read, Keynote speaker, Samantha Williams, CEO, Williams Tech Solutions. Announcement, major industry acquisition. She tried desperately to get Richard's attention, but he was too busy performing for the crowd. The phone rang a third time. Sam pressed the speaker button, her finger hovering over the answer key. The stage speakers would broadcast whatever came next to all 800 guests. She looked directly at Richard Blackwood III, champagne still glistening in her hair. "This is your last chance to reconsider," she said quietly. Richard threw his head back and laughed. The fourth ring echoed through the ballroom speakers as Sam's finger pressed answer. But before anyone could speak, Richard grabbed the microphone back. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's not waste any more time on this charade." He nodded to Todd Anderson. "Remove her." Immediately. Todd stepped forward, his hand reaching for Sam's elbow. "Ma'am, please end the call and come with me." Sam held up one finger, a gesture so calm and authoritative that Todd instinctively paused. "Johnson," she said into the phone, her voice carrying clearly through the stage speakers. "Miss Williams!" The voice that emerged was crisp, professional, and amplified to every corner of the ballroom. "I was expecting your call. Are you ready for the announcement? Victoria's live stream chat went wild. Who is Johnson? Plot twist incoming." "This is getting interesting." Richard's confidence flickered for just a moment. "Security, I said remove her now." But Todd Anderson stood frozen, something about the phone conversation striking him as significant. "Johnson, before we proceed," Sam continued, "I need you to confirm the details of our acquisition for everyone here." The Blackwood Industries executives at the head table suddenly looked up from their phones. Senior Vice President Patricia Ross whispered urgently to her colleague, "Williams, why does that name sound familiar?" "Of course, Ms. Williams," Johnson's voice replied through the speakers. "Williams Tech Solutions' $1.2 billion acquisition of Blackwood Industries. The announcement is scheduled for tomorrow morning." The ballroom went silent. 800 conversations stopped mid-sentence. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the kitchen staff in the background stopped moving, Richard's face drained of color. "Williams Tech? You can't possibly be—" "Johnson," Sam continued calmly, "please also confirm our new diversity and inclusion requirements for all acquired companies." Victoria's phone slipped in her trembling hands. Her live stream viewer count shot past 150,000 as people shared the moment across social platforms. "Yes, ma'am," Johnson replied. "All executive teams must demonstrate measurable, inclusive leadership practices. Companies failing to meet these standards will be excluded from acquisition consideration." James Blackwood grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, Williams Tech is the company buying us. If she's really—" "Impossible," Richard hissed, but his voice had lost its theatrical confidence. Helen Carter finally managed to shove her tablet in front of Richard's face. The guest list entry glowed accusingly. Keynote speaker, Samantha Williams, CEO, Williams Tech Solutions. Richard's knees buckled slightly. Business reporter Jake Morrison was already typing furiously on his phone, sending alerts to his editors. Breaking. Potential discrimination incident involving Williams Tech CEO at charity gala. Sam's phone conversation continued, broadcast to every stunned guest. Johnson, what's the status of Monday's emergency board meeting? Everything is prepared, Ms. Williams. The Blackwood Industries Board will vote on new leadership requirements as a condition of the acquisition. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria desperately tried to end her live stream, but her hands shook too violently to hit the right buttons. Comments flooded faster than she could read. Holy shit, she's the CEO! Those people are fucked! I can't believe what I'm watching! This is going viral! Patricia Ross stood up from the head table, her face pale. Richard, we need to talk, right now. But Richard couldn't move. The microphone hung limp in his hand as the full weight of his actions crashed over him. Todd Anderson stepped backward, his security instincts screaming that he was in the middle of something far beyond his pay grade. There's one more matter, Johnson, Sam said, her voice still perfectly calm despite champagne staining her dress. Please remind me of the timeline for finalizing this acquisition. The contracts require signature by Friday, Ms. Williams. Any delays or complications could result in automatic cancellation clauses taking effect. Friday. 3 days away. Richard found his voice, though it came out as a croak. Ms. Williams, surely we can discuss this privately. Sam finally looked directly at him, her dark eyes reflecting the stage lights. Mr. Blackwood, you wanted this moment documented. You insisted everyone should watch. She gestured toward the 800 guests sitting in stunned silence, phones still recording. You said actions have consequences. The crowd that had been laughing minutes earlier now looked like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. Johnson, Sam continued into the phone, given tonight's events, what's your recommendation regarding the acquisition timeline? That depends, Ms. Williams. Are there any concerns about leadership compatibility between our companies? Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Victoria's live stream had reached 200,000 viewers. The chat was moving too fast to follow, but certain phrases kept repeating, K-A-R-M-A. She played them. This is insane. Sam's finger hovered over the phone's end call button. Johnson, I'll call you back in exactly 10 minutes with my final decision. She ended the call. The ballroom remained absolutely silent, except for the distant clinking of nervous servers in the kitchen. Sam turned to face Richard Blackwood III, the man who had poured champagne over her head 3 minutes earlier. Now, she said quietly, would you like to discuss this properly? Richard's hand trembled as he gripped the microphone. Sweat beaded on his forehead under the hot stage lights. Ms. Williams, I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Sam's voice cut through his stammering with surgical precision. You called me a monkey. You poured champagne over my head. 800 people watched you humiliate me. She gestured toward Victoria's phone, still live streaming to 200,000 viewers. And you broadcast it to the world. Victoria finally managed to end her stream, but screenshots were already spreading across Twitter like wildfire. Champagnegate began trending within minutes. James stepped forward desperately. Look, we didn't know who you were. The guest list clearly identified me, Sam replied. Your event coordinator tried to warn your father twice. Helen Carter stood frozen at the edge of the stage, her tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. Richard attempted to regain control. Ms. Williams, I sincerely apologize for the confusion. Perhaps we could discuss the acquisition terms privately. The acquisition? Sam tilted her head slightly. Mr. Blackwood, you seem to have misunderstood something fundamental. She pulled her phone back out, scrolling through her contacts with deliberate slowness. Johnson wasn't calling about purchasing your company. The words hit Richard like a physical blow. Williams Tech already owns 31% of Blackwood Industries stock. We've been your largest shareholder for 8 months. Patricia Ross shot up from the head table. That's impossible. We would have been notified of any major shareholding, Sam said simply. Perfectly legal. Your board approved every transaction. She found the contact she was looking for and dialed. Johnson? Yes, it's time for the second announcement. Richard's face went from pale to gray. Second announcement? The phone rang once before a familiar voice answered through the speakers. Ms. Williams, are you ready to proceed with the hostile takeover? The phrase hostile takeover echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. 800 gasps rose simultaneously. Victoria dropped her phone completely. The device clattered across the marble stage. Johnson, Sam continued, please explain our current position to everyone here. Certainly. Williams Tech, in partnership with Davidson Financial and Sterling Capital, now controls 67% of Blackwood Industries' voting shares. We have the authority to call an emergency shareholders meeting and replace the entire board of directors. Richard grabbed the edge of the podium to keep from falling. That's impossible, he whispered into the microphone. The board would have to approve. Your board? Sam's eyebrows raised slightly. Mr. Blackwood, your board has been trying to remove you for 6 months. Your company's quarterly losses exceeded 12% this year. The pension fund managers have been furious. She turned to address the stunned crowd directly. Ladies and gentlemen, Blackwood Industries has been hemorrhaging money. Their outdated practices and leadership failures have cost shareholders over $400 million. Jake Morrison was typing so fast his phone screen could barely keep up. This wasn't just a discrimination story anymore. This was a corporate coup happening in real time. The emergency shareholders meeting, Sam continued to Johnson over the speakers. When is it scheduled? Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. All major shareholders have been notified. And the agenda? Vote of no confidence in current leadership. Immediate replacement of CEO, CFO, and board chairman. Implementation of new diversity and inclusion requirements. Restructuring of executive compensation tied to measurable equity metrics. Richard's legs finally gave out. He sank into a chair that Helen quickly provided, his face ashen. But the acquisition, James stammered. You said Williams Tech was buying us for $1.2 billion? Sam's lips curved into the faintest smile. That was Plan A. A friendly merger with your father retaining some leadership role. She looked directly at Richard. You just activated Plan B. The ballroom remained dead silent except for the frantic clicking of phones as guests shared the unfolding drama. Plan B, Sam explained to the crowd, involves removing your father entirely and restructuring Blackwood Industries as a subsidiary of Williams Tech. The takeover value drops to $800 million, but we eliminate the leadership problem permanently. Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out as a squeak. You can't do this! This is revenge. Revenge? Sam turned to face her. Mrs. Blackwood, this is business. Your husband's discriminatory behavior just demonstrated exactly why your company's leadership needs to change. She held up her phone, showing the recording app that had been running throughout the entire incident. Every word he said is documented. His fitness to lead a major corporation has been publicly questioned. Patricia Ross approached the stage, her face grave. Ms. Williams, what would it take to return to the original acquisition plan? Sam considered this for a moment, her fingers drumming lightly against her phone. Johnson, she said into the speaker, remind me of the conditions for reverting to Plan A. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, immediate implementation of bias training for all leadership, third-party oversight of diversity initiatives, and personal guarantees from Mr. Blackwood regarding future conduct. Richard looked up from his chair, desperation replacing arrogance in his eyes. Ms. Williams, I made a terrible mistake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Mr. Blackwood, Sam interrupted, you have exactly 3 minutes to decide. Plan A with conditions, or Plan B with total restructuring. She glanced at her watch. Choose wisely. 200,000 people are watching, and the market opens in 12 hours. Victoria burst into tears. James stared at his father in horrified disbelief. The crowd of billionaires sat transfixed, witnessing the destruction of one of their own in real time. Richard Blackwood III, who had ruled corporate boardrooms for 30 years, sat broken in a chair while champagne stains dried on a black woman's dress. Sam checked her watch again. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Mr. Blackwood. Richard's voice cracked as he leaned into the microphone. Plan A. I choose Plan A. Sam didn't respond immediately. She studied him with the cold calculation of a surgeon examining a patient. Johnson, she said into the phone, Mr. Blackwood has indicated interest in Plan A. Please outline the specific requirements. Certainly, Miss Williams. First, public acknowledgement of discriminatory behavior within 24 hours via press release and social media. Second, mandatory bias training for all C-suite executives completed within 30 days. Third, appointment of an external diversity officer with board-level authority. Fourth, quarterly public reports on inclusion metrics tied directly to executive compensation. Richard nodded frantically. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need. I'm not finished, Johnson's voice continued through the speakers. Fifth, Mr. Blackwood must personally undergo 40 hours of sensitivity training with Dr. Patricia Moore, documented and verified. Sixth, Williams Tech receives permanent board representation 3 seats minimum. The crowd murmured. These weren't suggestions. They were corporate surrender terms. Seventh, Johnson continued, any future discriminatory incidents result in immediate activation of Plan B, with no opportunity for appeal. Sam walked slowly across the stage, her heels clicking against the marble. Champagne had dried in her hair, but her posture remained perfectly composed. Mr. Blackwood, do you understand these terms? Yes, Richard whispered. I need you to speak into the microphone. 800 witnesses need to hear your acceptance clearly. Richard struggled to his feet, his legs unsteady. Yes, I understand and accept all terms. Excellent. Johnson, please execute the legal framework. Ms. Williams, I have the contracts ready for digital signature. SEC notification will be filed within the hour and the press release template is prepared. Patricia Ross stepped closer to the stage. Ms. Williams, what about the financial implications? The original $1.2 billion valuation remains intact, Sam replied, contingent on full compliance with the terms. However, any violation drops the valuation to $600 million and triggers immediate hostile takeover. She turned to address the entire ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something unprecedented tonight. This is how corporate accountability actually works. Jake Morrison raised his hand slightly. Ms. Williams, for the record, what was your primary motivation here? Sam paused, considering her words carefully. Mr. Morrison, discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's bad business. Companies with inclusive leadership outperform their peers by 35%. Diverse executive teams generate 70% higher revenue growth. Mr. Blackwood's behavior tonight demonstrated exactly why Blackwood Industries has been failing. She gestured toward the data on her phone. Blackwood Industries stock has dropped 18% over the past year. Employee turnover in their executive ranks is 67% above industry average. 3 major clients have terminated contracts, citing cultural concerns. Richard's face grew more ashen with each statistic. Williams Tech, by contrast, has increased valuation by 340% over 3 years through inclusive practices. Our leadership team is 60% women and people of color. Our innovation pipeline is the strongest in the industry. Victoria wiped tears from her cheeks, smearing her makeup. But this is public humiliation! Mrs. Blackwood, Sam replied evenly. You live-streamed my humiliation to 200,000 people. You chose to make this public. She held up her phone, showing the social media notifications still flooding in. # Champagne Gate is trending worldwide. Your family's behavior is being discussed in boardrooms across the globe. Corporate America is watching how this resolves. James found his voice, though it wavered. What happens to our family's reputation? That Sam said simply, depends entirely on your father's next actions. She checked her watch, a gesture that had become increasingly ominous throughout the evening. Mr. Blackwood, you have 18 hours to issue your public statement. The press release must acknowledge discriminatory behavior, commit to systemic change, and personally apologize for tonight's incident. 18 hours? Richard's voice pitched higher. That's not enough time to craft proper messaging. Mr. Blackwood, Sam interrupted, you had 30 seconds to decide whether to humiliate me. 18 hours is generous for a simple apology. She turned back to her phone. Johnson, please confirm the market implications if Mr. Blackwood fails to comply. Certainly. Blackwood Industries stock will face immediate selling pressure. Credit ratings will be reviewed for downgrade. Major institutional investors have already expressed concerns about leadership stability. The weight of financial destruction hung over the ballroom like storm clouds. Furthermore, Johnson continued, Williams Tech has preemptively secured agreements with Blackwood's 3 largest clients. They've agreed to transfer their contracts to us if leadership changes occur. Richard swayed on his feet. You're destroying everything I built. No, Mr. Blackwood. You did that when you chose humiliation over human dignity. Sam's voice remained steady, clinical. I'm offering you a chance to salvage something from the wreckage. But the choice was always yours. She gestured toward the crowd of 800 witnesses. Every person in this room saw you pour champagne over my head. Every person heard you call me a monkey. Your behavior was broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. The ballroom remained eerily quiet except for the occasional clink of nervous fidgeting. Corporate America can no longer ignore discrimination and expect business as usual. Tonight proves that actions have consequences, real financial consequences. Patricia Ross cleared her throat. Ms. Williams, assuming full compliance, what's the timeline for integration? 6 months for complete restructuring. Blackwood Industries will become the East Coast division of Williams Tech. All employees will be retained and retrained according to our standards. She paused, scanning the crowd. Excellence isn't about exclusion, it's about elevating everyone to their highest potential. Richard clutched the microphone like a lifeline. Ms. Williams, I swear to you, this will never happen again. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Sam studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Mr. Blackwood, your words tonight revealed who you really are. Your actions over the next 18 hours will determine who you choose to become. She collected her champagne-stained briefcase from beside the podium. Johnson, please send the final contracts to Mr. Blackwood's legal team. The clock starts now. The line went dead. Sam turned to face the 800 guests one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for witnessing accountability in action. 17 hours and 43 minutes later, Richard Blackwood III stood before a bank of cameras in his company's headquarters lobby. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His usually perfect hair showed signs of a sleepless night. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, he began, his voice hoarse. I am here to address my inexcusable behavior at last night's Global Innovation Gala. The press release had gone out at 6 a.m. sharp. By 7 a.m., it was the lead story on every major business network. Richard continued reading from prepared remarks. I publicly humiliated Ms. Samantha Williams through discriminatory actions and language that have no place in corporate leadership or civilized society. Behind him, Blackwood Industries' stock ticker showed a 3% uptick, the first positive movement in weeks. I take full responsibility for my actions. I called Ms. Williams a racial slur and poured champagne over her head in front of 800 witnesses. This behavior was racist, degrading, and completely unacceptable. CNN Business ran a split screen. Richard's apology on the left, footage from Victoria's live stream on the right. Effective immediately. I am enrolling in comprehensive bias training with Dr. Patricia Moore. Blackwood Industries will implement new inclusive leadership standards developed in partnership with Williams Tech Solutions. The questions came rapid fire. Mr. Blackwood, how do you respond to calls for your resignation? Will your wife face any consequences for live streaming the incident? What's your message to employees who've experienced discrimination? Richard's hands shook as he gripped the podium. The board has voted to retain me as CEO contingent on full compliance with the reform program. My wife, Victoria, will also undergo sensitivity training and has deactivated her social media accounts pending completion. At Williams Tech headquarters across town, Sam watched the press conference from her corner office. Her assistant knocked and entered. Ms. Williams, Dr. Moore is here for your 10 a.m. meeting. Dr. Patricia Moore, a renowned organizational psychologist, entered with a tablet full of notes. Ms. Williams, I've reviewed the Blackwood case. The reform program you've outlined is ambitious. Dr. Moore, systematic change requires systematic intervention. What's your assessment of their commitment level? Richard Blackwood is terrified. That's actually helpful. Fear of financial ruin can motivate real behavioral change. His son James seems genuinely remorseful. Victoria. Dr. Moore paused. Victoria is angry and defensive. She'll require different approaches. Sam nodded. And the broader organizational culture? Blackwood Industries has a documented history of discrimination complaints. HR files show 17 incidents over 3 years, all quietly settled with NDAS. The AROT goes deep. Hence the comprehensive approach. Tell me about the monitoring system. Dr. Moore pulled up her presentation. Real-time bias detection software will monitor all internal communications for problematic language. Anonymous reporting through a third-party app connects directly to my oversight committee. Monthly culture assessments with statistical analysis. And the accountability measures? Executive compensation directly tied to inclusion metrics. Quarterly 360-degree feedback including bias assessment. Any manager with more than 2 verified incidents faces immediate termination. Sam studied the data. Dr. Moore, I need this program to be bulletproof. Corporate America is watching. It will be. I've implemented similar systems at Google, Microsoft, and Tesla. The Blackwood program will be even more comprehensive. Meanwhile, at Blackwood Industries, the emergency board meeting was underway. Patricia Ross addressed the room of 12 directors. The Williams Tech integration proceeds on schedule. Employee retention is at 94% higher than projected. Client confidence is stabilizing. Board member Thomas Chen raised his hand. Patricia, what about the financial projections? Remarkably positive. The inclusive leadership training has already identified 3 major inefficiencies in our innovation pipeline. Williams Tech's methodologies are being implemented across all divisions. And employee morale. Surveys show 78% approval for the changes. Many employees express relief that discrimination concerns will finally be addressed systematically. The transformation was visible throughout Blackwood's offices. New posters outlined the inclusive excellence standards. Anonymous reporting QR codes appeared in every conference room. Diversity metrics dashboards were installed in common areas. In the Executive Training Center, Richard sat across from Dr. Moore, working through bias recognition exercises. Mr. Blackwood, describe your thought process when you first saw Ms. Williams on stage. Richard squirmed in his chair. I made assumptions based on her appearance and attire. What specific assumptions? That she didn't belong there. That she was service staff. And what information did you use to form these assumptions? Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. Her race. The fact that she wasn't wearing an expensive gown. How might these assumptions affect your business decisions? They could cause me to overlook qualified candidates, to make hiring decisions based on prejudice rather than merit. Dr. Moore made notes. This awareness is progress, Mr. Blackwood. Real change requires acknowledging these unconscious biases exist. The program's effects rippled beyond Blackwood Industries. Harvard Business School scheduled a case study. The Society for Human Resource Management adopted Sam's accountability framework as best practice. 5 Fortune 500 companies requested similar transformation programs. Victoria Blackwood sat in her first training session, arms crossed defensively. The facilitator, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, remained patient. "Mrs. Blackwood, your live stream reached 200,000 viewers. What message do you think that sent?" "I was just recording what happened," Victoria muttered. "Your commentary included phrases like, 'This is hilarious,' and 'she should know her place.' How might viewers interpret those words?" Victoria shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't thinking about interpretation. Social media amplifies our unconscious biases. Your platform gave those biases global reach. The training continued for weeks. Gradually, grudgingly, Victoria began to understand the impact of her actions. 3 months later, Blackwood Industries released its first quarterly diversity report. The numbers were stark. Employee satisfaction up 34%. Innovation pipeline expanded by 67%. Client retention at 98%. Revenue growth exceeded projections by 23%. Sam reviewed the report from her office, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. Her assistant buzzed in. "Ms. Williams, you have the Microsoft executives here for the 2 p.m. regarding their transformation program." "Perfect. Send them in." The Microsoft team entered 3 executives who'd been following the Blackwood case closely. "Ms. Williams," their lead representative began, "we want to implement your accountability framework across our entire organization. Can Williams Tech handle a project of that scale?" Sam smiled. "Gentlemen, systematic change is our specialty. When would you like to begin?" Outside her window, the city hummed with its usual energy. But in boardrooms across America, conversations about inclusion and accountability were happening with new urgency. The champagne incident had become a watershed moment. Corporate leaders now understood that discrimination carried real financial consequences. Sam's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Moore. Richard Blackwood completed his 40-hour program. Remarkable transformation. Recommending him for the next phase. She typed back, "Excellent." Real change is possible when the stakes are clear. The revolution had begun quietly, methodically, with data and strategic pressure, just as Sam preferred it. 6 months later, Sam Williams stood before 500 corporate executives at the National Business Leadership Conference in Chicago. The same champagne-stained dress hung framed in her office, a reminder that dignity preserved becomes power multiplied. "Excellence isn't achieved through exclusion," she told the rapt audience. "It's achieved by elevating everyone to their highest potential." The Blackwood transformation had become corporate legend. Harvard, Wharton, and Stanford now taught the Williams method in their MBA programs. The case study was required reading, "Strategic Response to Discrimination: How Quiet Power Reshapes Corporate Culture." Richard Blackwood III sat in the front row, taking notes like an eager student. The broken man from the Gala stage had evolved into an unlikely advocate for inclusion. His company's stock had reached all-time highs. Employee retention hit 97%. Innovation metrics soared. "Mr. Blackwood," Sam addressed him directly, "would you share your perspective on systematic change?" Richard stood, his voice steady now. "Ms. Williams taught me that diversity isn't charity, it's competitive advantage. Our executive team is now 55% women and people of color. Our innovation pipeline has tripled. Profit margins exceed industry benchmarks by 34%. He paused, gathering courage for what came next. "Most importantly, we've created a workplace where everyone's potential can flourish. That includes people who look like me learning to recognize our blind spots." The audience applauded, a sound that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Victoria Blackwood had undergone her own transformation. Her new Instagram account focused on amplifying diverse voices in business. Her follower count had actually grown, but for entirely different reasons. Young professionals sought her insights on recovering from public mistakes. Accountability, she'd written in a recent post, isn't punishment, it's opportunity for growth. James Blackwood now headed Blackwood Industries' inclusion initiatives. His first hire had been Dr. Patricia Moore as Chief Diversity Officer. Under her guidance, the company's culture surveys showed remarkable shifts. 89% of employees felt psychologically safe to express ideas. Bias incidents dropped to 0 over 4 consecutive months. Innovation submissions increased 156% across all demographic groups. Client satisfaction ratings reached company records. The ripple effects extended far beyond one company. The Williams Standard had been adopted by 127 Fortune 500 companies. Boardrooms across America now included real-time bias monitoring. Executive compensation tied to inclusion metrics became industry standard. Sam's phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. Tesla, Amazon, and Goldman Sachs requesting transformation consultations. The demand for systematic change had become a movement. But Sam's proudest achievement sat in a folder marked Employee Letters. Hundreds of messages from workers whose voices had been marginalized for years. Ms. Williams, because of your courage, I finally reported harassment in my department. Management actually listened and made changes. The anonymous reporting system saved my career. I can contribute authentically now. My daughter saw your press conference. She said she wants to be a CEO like you. Real-life stories of transformation, one person at a time. Dr. Moore's research had quantified the impact. Companies implementing the Williams method showed 67% reduction in discrimination complaints, 45% increase in innovation patents, filed 78% improvement in employee retention, 23% boost in quarterly revenue growth. The data proved what Sam had always known. Inclusion wasn't just morally right, it was economically essential. Standing before the Chicago audience, Sam concluded her keynote with words that had become her signature. Change doesn't require rage or revenge. It requires strategy, persistence, and unwavering commitment to human dignity. When we elevate everyone, we all rise higher. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Later, in quiet moments between speaking engagements, Sam reflected on the path that led here. The champagne-stained dress in her office served as a reminder. Sometimes our greatest humiliations become our most powerful catalysts. Her assistant knocked. Ms. Williams, you have the Congressional Subcommittee call at 4 p.m. about the Corporate Accountability Act. Sam nodded. Lawmakers were now drafting legislation based on her transformation model. The private sector's success had caught political attention. And Ms. Williams? The Blackwood Quarterly Report shows continued excellence. Mr. Blackwood personally requested to present the diversity metrics to you. Sam smiled. Schedule it. His journey deserves recognition. This was how real change happened. Not through angry confrontation, but through strategic pressure applied with surgical precision. Not through destroying people, but through transforming systems that allowed destructive behavior to flourish. The Williams method had proven that accountability and empathy could coexist, that consequences and compassion could work together, that Black stories of quiet strength could reshape entire industries. Young professionals now studied her approach as a masterclass in strategic leadership. Business schools dissected every decision she'd made that night on the Gala stage. But for Sam, the real victory was simpler. Walking into any boardroom in America knowing that systematic discrimination now carried genuine consequences. Her phone buzzed with notifications, meeting requests, speaking invitations, transformation consultations. Corporate America had learned that inclusive leadership wasn't optional anymore. It was the price of admission to the future. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace or community? These real-life stories prove that strategic responses create lasting change. Sam Williams showed us that touching stories of quiet power can transform entire systems when we combine courage with calculated action. Share your experience in the comments below. Your Black stories matter. Your life stories of resilience inspire others to find their own strategic strength. Subscribe for weekly real-life stories of professional transformation. Together, we're building a future where everyone's potential can flourish. Because change doesn't happen by accident, it happens when we make it inevitable. Share this story. Comment your experiences. Subscribe for more transformation tales. The revolution continues, one strategic response at a time.
Sometimes the most powerful revolutions don't come with noise, just one person standing their ground. At Beat Stories, we highlight those moments that shift the balance. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, because every week we bring real stories that shake the system.